What if the real treasure in your company isn't the product you sell, but the data you're throwing away every day?
Nokia actually had the smartphone before Apple, and they could never integrate it together, not because they didn't have the technology, it's because their organizational structure was in the way.
And we're in a period of great uncertainty now, with not only with AI, but with the world economy and other things. Do you have any thoughts on what you think might not change in the next 10 years?
I don't think your first question should be, where can I apply AI in my business? I think the first question you should ask is,
this episode reveals how forward-thinking organizations like Amazon and Netflix turned hidden data into billions of dollars, and how you can do the same. Let's jump in.
One of the things I think is important for everyone to think about is I don't think your first question should be, where can I apply AI in my business? I think the first question you should ask is, what business problem do I need to solve? Right?
Right.
And once you say, what business problem do I want to solve? The second question is do I have the data to solve it? And if I don't have the data to solve it, how do I generate the data? And then once you have the data, I think the third question to ask is, do I try to do this myself, or do I bring in an AI partner? And then run a pilot. So probably the very first stage zero is probably to educate yourself and your staff on AI and AI tools and AI resources. But I think the first question needs to be, what problem do we need to solve? And I usually think about it in 5 vectors. I think every customer wants something that's good, fast, cheap, easy, and sustainable. And so I think you can take each one of those and say, well, wait a minute, is it costing more money than it should? Is it taking longer time than it should? Do I have more defects than I really wanted? Is it really difficult for the customer to use my service? And is there a bunch of waste in the process? And you can ask those questions, and then by doing that, you uncover a business problem to solve. And then utilizing the data and utilizing AI tools, you can optimize that part of your operations. And again, I believe by doing so, you'll uncover new types of businesses that you can offer your customers.
Yeah, so it seems like every company, whether they're in manufacturing or in other parts, really needs to think about the data, becoming, collecting data. And when you talk about the Moderna example of actually developing the products almost within the computer first, and then kind of manufacturing them or prototyping them. And so there's like a mind shift change, even in just thinking about the type of company you are, really, to be thinking you're a kind of a sort of a data first company. And then kind of beyond that is basically understanding, okay, where are the problems? Where are the business problems? And how do we map the business problems to the data and the potential AI solution? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way to approach it. I think the other thing is that I guess what I would do is create a matrix of what are the biggest problems to be solved, and which problems have the highest degree of uncertainty, or the highest degree of maybe your capability to solve it, so that you can prioritize those business problems and make sure that, I think sometimes we try to work on the biggest problem. I like to find, a problem with a lot of impact, and it's also easy to implement, right? And get the cash register ringing, and then, let that actually fuel the next type of project that you work on, so that it all becomes self-sustaining, and you can kind of be your own bank, if you will, that you can generate the income to do the next project.
Yeah. So one of the things you've spoken about is kind of this kind of framework for thinking about innovation and opportunities, the product, channel, brand, business model. How do you think that fits in with, what you've spoken about so far?
Well, I think that there's two aspects. One is I think it's important for people to think about not their business model, and what I mean by that is, are you a product centric company, like Nokia, or are you a bit centric company, like Apple? That's the first thing is what's your business model. But the second thing that I think it's important is what's your operating model. Part of the issue that I see in companies today is they're very siloed. So you have a P&L, that has its own proprietary data, and the information isn't shared very effectively across the different silos. And so the question becomes, how do you become more customer centric, with the proper APIs in place, and then a data lake that everybody draws from. What's interesting is Nokia actually had the smartphone before Apple. But the problem was is that you could buy a sport phone, you could buy a weather phone, you could buy a news phone, because there was a vice president of weather phone, a vice president of sports phones, a vice president of news phones, and they could never integrate it together, not because they didn't have the technology, it's because their organizational structure was in the way. So in addition to innovating your product and your channel and your brand and your business model, I think you got to innovate your organization as well, to be a AI first organizational model. How do you rewire your organization? Because again, these top down structures that we have, all before the internet, Sir Francis Bacon was right. Knowledge is power, right? And that's how organizations, you have the hierarchy to control the information in an organization. But, after the internet, when almost all information is accessible to every single person on earth, knowledge is no longer power. Einstein is right. Imagination is more important than knowledge. And so what's really key is how do you unlock the imagination in your organization by not only changing your business model, but changing your organizational model to take advantage of these exponential technologies.
Right, right. So there's it, it feels like for a lot of companies, that's going to be quite a big cultural shift, maybe talent shift as well in terms of training and um, capabilities. Do you have any thoughts on how organizations should think about these types of challenges?
Yeah, well, I think it has to start with education. You talked a little bit about earlier about some of the work that I'm doing, developing AI curriculum for technical colleges through a company called Midpoint Consulting here in Wisconsin, and also involved in creating the Central Wisconsin AI Center with University of Wisconsin Stout, University of Wisconsin Stevens Point, and North Central Technical College. And the aim there is to engage 100,000 workers at 300 companies in the next 3 years, because we think it's vitally important that people get educated on understanding AI and how to go from, hype to reality. I think there's three things that every company needs to do. One is build the digital IQ of their talent so that you can, separate buzzwords from reality. The second thing is I think that we need to put new tools in people's hands. We give somebody a smartphone and PowerPoint and Excel, but I think what we need to be able to do is give people tools that allow them to use social listening to understand what the customer wants before they can articulate it. Virtual product prototyping, virtual product testing, machine learning to optimize manufacturing processes so that people can make products better, faster, and cheaper than ever before. And then the third is data. We need to have data architecture that allows us to do knowledge management that allows us to do agile learning that creates a foundation for generative AI. And so if you have those three things in place, the digital IQ of your talent, new AI tools, and the data infrastructure that enables generative AI, then you have the 21st century worker. And I think that's what companies need to focus on is building their talent, reskilling their talent, and helping their talent have this digital IQ, digital tools, and digital data to transform their products, their brands, their channels, their business models, and their organizational structure. So it all begins with education, and that's primarily what I'm focused on through Midpoint Consulting.
Okay, awesome. And I guess one last question, which, there's this famous Jeff Bezos quote that the way he thinks about strategy is to think about the things that won't change over a 10-year period. And we're in a period of great uncertainty now with just not only with AI, but with the world economy and other things. Do you have any thoughts on what you think might not change in the next 10 years?
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier, good, fast, cheap, and easy, right? People are still going to want good quality products at the cheapest cost possible, and making it super easy to get in the shortest period of time. And I think more important, I think people want sustainability. One of the things, I think that I talk a lot about is humanity-centric innovation, this idea of solving the world's problems in an economically viable way, by focusing on the needs of humanity, the business models of the 21st century, and these exponential technologies. And I think that's not going to change over the next 10 years. I think we're going to need more of that over the next 10 years. And I think Jeff Bezos is exactly right. People are always going to want good, fast, cheap, and easy.
So if data is the new oil and AI is the new electricity, most companies are probably sitting on a gold mine, but still using candlelight. What do you think?
Ah, yes, the classic corporate strategy. Discovering oil in your backyard, but deciding to keep mining coal instead.
Fortunately, there's an easier way to keep up with ideas for finding oil. Our newsletter shares real strategies companies can use to turn data into impact. It's linked in the description below, and the only thing worse than wasted data is wasted potential.